There comes a point in life when you genuinely believe you don't need anyone. You tell yourself you're fine on your own. You're independent, strong, self-sufficient. Friends are nice, sure, but not necessary. You convince yourself that relying on people is a weakness, and that being alone is somehow proof that you've figured life out. Then something happens. Life hits harder than expected. Maybe it's failure. Maybe it's heartbreak. Maybe it's one of those nights where everything feels heavier than it should. And for the first time in a long while, you reach out to someone. Someone you thought would understand. Instead, they laugh. Or they brush it off. Or they respond with a joke when what you needed was a conversation. And suddenly you feel worse than before you reached out. That's usually the moment people learn something uncomfortable about loneliness. Loneliness isn't just a feeling. It's a force. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you had a real conversation with a friend? Not a text message. Not a meme. Not a reaction to a story. Not a quick "how's it going" that ends after 3 messages. A real conversation. The kind where both people stop what they're doing and actually talk. Was it last week? Last month? Last year? If you're not sure, think about your contacts list for a second. Most of us have people stored in our phones that we still call friends. But if we're being honest, many of those friendships quietly ended a long time ago. They just never had a formal goodbye. The relationship was slowly replaced by likes, emojis, and occasional comments. We still tell ourselves the friendship exists because the name is still there. But friendship isn't a contact in your phone. Friendship is presence. And that's where most people get it wrong. We tend to think friends are optional. Something that makes life more enjoyable but isn't truly necessary. We admire independence. We celebrate the idea of not needing anyone. But your body doesn't share that belief. Your biology doesn't care how independent you think you are. What it understands is connection. And when connection disappears for long enough, things begin to break. Researchers have found that chronic loneliness is associated with significantly higher risks of illness and early death. In some studies, its health impact has been compared to smoking multiple cigarettes every day. That's a strange thing to think about. Being alone can be as damaging as habits we already know are dangerous. Not emotionally. Physically. Your heart doesn't care about your personal philosophy. Your immune system doesn't care whether you're proud of being self-sufficient. The body interprets prolonged isolation as a threat. And maybe that shouldn't surprise us. Human beings were never designed to survive alone. For most of history, isolation wasn't uncomfortable. It was deadly. A single human wandering through the world by themselves stood very little chance. Groups survived. Communities survived. Tribes survived. Individuals rarely did. For hundreds of thousands of years, safety meant people. Food meant people. Protection meant people. Survival meant people. So evolution built a brain that rewards connection and punishes isolation. That's why being around trusted people feels good. It's not random. Your brain releases chemicals that reinforce social bonds because, for most of human history, those bonds were the difference between life and death. Connection wasn't a luxury. It was survival. And maybe that's why some of the most meaningful friendships aren't the loudest ones. Some people have huge social circles. Endless group chats. Weekend plans every week. Their lives look full from the outside. Others have 1 or 2 people they can truly rely on. And honestly, those relationships might matter more. Most of us can remember someone who showed up when they didn't have to. Someone who appeared during a difficult chapter without being asked. The friend who drives across town because they know you're struggling. The friend who notices something is wrong before you say anything. The friend who refuses to let you sit alone with your thoughts when they know you're sinking. Those moments are easy to underestimate. But they stay with us. Because deep down, they communicate something every human being desperately wants to know. You matter enough for someone to show up. And that's becoming increasingly rare. The strange thing about modern life is that we are surrounded by people. We have followers, contacts, notifications, group chats. Messages arriving every hour. On paper, we are more connected than any generation in history. Yet loneliness keeps increasing. How is that possible? Because information is not connection. Attention is not connection. Visibility is not connection. Someone viewing your story is not the same as someone noticing your pain. Someone liking your photo is not the same as someone sitting beside you when everything falls apart. Technology has given us the ability to reach everyone. But somehow we've become harder to reach than ever. And that creates a strange kind of loneliness. The loneliness of being surrounded by people who know your updates but don't know you. The loneliness of having hundreds of contacts but nobody you feel comfortable calling at 3 in the morning. The loneliness of being visible without being understood. That's the loneliness that hurts the most. Because from the outside, your life looks full. But inside, it feels empty. And loneliness rarely announces itself. It doesn't arrive dramatically. It doesn't knock on the door and tell you it's here. It settles in quietly. A cancelled plan. A missed phone call. A month without seeing anyone. A year without a meaningful conversation. Little by little, the silence becomes normal. Until one day you realize you've been carrying it for much longer than you thought. Maybe that's why friendship matters more than we admit. Not because friends make life entertaining. Not because they make us less bored. But because they remind us that we're not meant to carry everything alone. Real friendship isn't measured by frequency. It's measured by presence. It's the person who shows up. The person who calls. The person who notices. The person who refuses to let you disappear into your own darkness. And if you already have someone like that in your life, don't assume they'll always know they're appreciated. Tell them. Reach out. Start the conversation. Because meaningful relationships rarely disappear overnight. They fade through neglect. And if you don't have someone like that yet, become that person for somebody else. Sometimes the strongest friendships begin when one person decides to show up first. At the end of the day, the question isn't whether humans need friends. We've always needed people. The real question is much simpler. If you vanished tomorrow, who would notice? And perhaps even more importantly, who would you notice?